actually, just after following on Charles's session, we were heckling him on the side here about dynamic arrays being the best thing to happen to Excel in 20 years. And one of the things that I absolutely love about this product is that when you ask a bunch of experts here, what is the best thing to happen to Excel in 20 years, you can and do get different answers. And I think that's really cool because it starts to speak to the versatility of what this product is actually doing now. And I absolutely love the dynamic arrays function. I think they're game-changing, but the best, one of the best things, absolutely. So, so what we're going to do today is we're going to go through, and our session is called Garbage to Gold, From Dirty Data to Analytics in an Hour with Modern Excel. We're going to be looking at using Office 365 version of Excel. We have the most up-to-date version that we can get our hands on here. This is the November build of the Office 365 installation. And we're going to play this in a two-part role. One of the things that you may or may not know about me is that I love data. Data is awesome, and the dirtier the better, because we've got cool tools where we can clean it up and we can actually turn it into something useful. So that's going to be my role. I'm going to be taking a look at some really garbage data sets, and I'm going to turn them into nice tabular setups that are clean and easy to use so that Gasper can take them and turn them into a proper data model and build some analytics out of what we have. The question I've got for you, how many of you are actually using Power Query right now? Okay, that's a good number of hands. How about PowerPivots? All right, now we're going to go to the other side. How many of you have never used Power Query before? All right, I hope that you guys will change your minds after this and get into this, because this is huge. How many of you have never used PowerPivot before? A few of you? All right. How many never used pivot tables at all? One hand. Fantastic. That is good. All right, so you need to learn pivot tables, man. So here's the deal. One of the big challenges with pivot tables, with a standard pivot table, is if you have two tables of data and you want to serve them up into one pivot table, what do you have to do to get those tables to work with one pivot table? There's a formula for that, right? To bring them together? I think it was on Charles's list as one of the evil and hero functions. VLOOKUP, yeah, you have to VLOOKUP things together to serve it up to one pivot table. So for those of you who have never seen PowerPivot before, this game kind of changes a little bit. And I'm going to get rid of the slides now. We don't need any more slides today. We're going completely demos. What I want to do is I want to actually show you that I'm going to take the data, I'm going to clean it up and drop it into PowerPivot so that we can actually link everything together and not have multiple tables with VLOOKUPs. So it's not going to be a single VLOOKUP in what we do today. But before we do, I just want to show you a little bit about what we're actually going to be starting with here and working with. So we've got a few different things. I have a pricing table. It's just living in an Excel file. It's nothing super special. When I open this up, you'll see that there's just a table. It has some prices. The big deal with these is that we have courses that we're selling and attendees here, and the prices of our courses change over time. So if I were to pull this into one big solution and was trying to figure out the price of something, I would use a VLOOKUP with an approximate match to come back and get the price. So that's going to come into play a little bit later, but I'm not going to use any VLOOKUPs. Now I'm going to get rid of this guy here. I'm going to have him closed. The other thing that I'm dealing with, though, is I'm dealing with some data that's in kind of a nasty format. So I have a whole bunch. I've got an entire file full of text files, because that's how I'm getting my data sent to me. And these files look like this. Yeah, they're beautiful, aren't they? Oh yeah, one nice big column of repeating data. And it starts off with this topic, attendees, location, instructor, satisfaction, currency, date. And then the next line where you can see where it says word, that's the topic. So we have the stacked data pattern that's running over and over and over. And lucky us, we get the job of taking an entire folder full of these files, converting every single one, matching it up with our pricing to try and actually build a solution. And we've got less than an hour to do it. Okay? And as a matter of fact, I'm going to try and get this all set up for Gasper in about half an hour. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and start building out the model. And for those of you who came to my masterclass yesterday, you're going to see some things that look very familiar here. For those of you who are coming to my masterclass tomorrow, you will see there how we can do these things in a little bit more depth and a little bit slower. And for those of you who aren't coming to our masterclasses, you should really get on the list for next year. So here's what we're going to start with. I'm going to start with an Excel workbook. And full disclosure here, I do have a few things that I have already built. I have a little parameter here that tells me where my files are. It's just a hard-coded path to my files. And I've built a little calendar table, and I've pulled in some budgets and forecasts. These guys here have some different data problems, but unfortunately I don't have enough time to show all of that. So what I really want to focus on here is some of the really, really big cool things. The biggest one is, how do I get to my pricing table? How do I get to this entire folder full of files and actually clean all this up? So what we're going to do is we're going to start and we're going to go to our data tab and we're going to go to this pretty awesome button called Get Data. And this is the way we get into Power Query. It's got different places to get into it. This add-in, if you haven't worked with Power Query, is a free add-in for Excel 2010 and 2013. It's built into Excel 2016 and higher, and this is the modern experience we have today. So I'm going to go and choose to get data from a folder. This folder lives on my local PC, but the next connector down was from SharePoint Folder, so I can actually pull from SharePoint if my data is living there as well. So here's a little folder, and I've already built myself a parameter, so I can go and say, let's grab this from source folder, which drills down to the folder on my worksheet or on my computer. And it brings up a list of all of the files that are in this folder, so we can see every single one that's actually here. Now, what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to go and click the Transform Data button, and I'm going to launch into what I think is one of the best things to happen to Excel in 20 years, and that's the Power Query Editor. Inside here, I can make some modifications to the data that I actually have. And a couple of different pieces. What we're looking at right now is a listing of every single file that's here. I'm going to do a little bit of future-proofing around this to make sure that if somebody goes and throws an MP4 file into this folder, it's not going to blow everything up when I try and refresh it, because there's always one joker in my organization that thinks that's funny. Okay? So here's what we're going to do. We'll right-click on our extension, and we're going to transform, and we're going to force this to lowercase, even though it already is. And I'm also going to go to the name column here, and I'm going to put in a text filter, and I'm going to say that I want files that do not begin with, and there's a very specific character that I'm looking for here, and that is the tilde, the little wavy icon. Because this little character indicates, if the file starts with that it is a temp file. And that means that I have not only the original copy of the data, but also a temporary copy. And as it turns out, the temp file, if you try and combine it, tells you that the file's open, won't let you do it, so it blows everything up. So at this point, even though nothing looks super different, I've now future-proofed to make sure that everything's going to be okay. There is something else that I'd like to do with this as well. The file path that I've got here for folder path is really, really long. There's a whole bunch of stuff in here. So I'm going to quickly go and right-click, and I'm going to choose to replace values. And I'm going to choose my little parameter, which was my file path, and I'm just going to get rid of it. We'll replace this with nothing to shorten down to say, here's the folders that I actually have. So I've got an attendance folder, I've got pricing, and I have a few files here that are not living in the attendance folder. They're in the root folder as well. I'll say, all right, cool. This is a list of all the files that are in this particular folder, so I'm going to call this files list. And this is a best practice that I always use when combining files, is to create a specific query just to go and enumerate all of the files in my list so that I can actually leverage this over and over again. Because as it turns out, we've got different types of files. We have an Excel file, this pricing file, and we have text files. We need to combine these differently. What I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to go now and open up my queries window, and I'm going to say, all right, I want to take this files list. I'm going to move it into a nice little place here called files lists, and I'm going to right-click, and I'm going to reference this files list query. And this particular query that I want to build is going to be my pricing query. So in order to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll across to the right-hand side. I'm going to drill down into the folder path that actually has just the pricing files, just in case I get a few more in there. And now when I scroll back across here, we can see that I have pricing.xlsx, and it's got this green word over here called binary. And what that actually means is this is the contents of the file. So I can click on this and I can drill in, and it will drill into this little table that actually shows me I've got a worksheet, the sheet called pricing, I've got a sheet called add data, and I have a table called pricing table. And what's weird about this when you look at this for the first time is that you can also see that we have a bunch of tables in the data column. And if I click beside this one, you can actually see what's in this. So this is kind of an odd concept because we've got worksheets that have cells that contain entire worksheets, which is weird and new and different and awesome. Because once we have this, I can say, that's the table I want. I'm going to click on this green word right here, and it will drill into it, and now I've got a beautiful little table that lives in an external file. But what's even better is that I don't have to take this the way that it is right now. I can make manipulations. Not necessarily to the data, although I can with some replacements and things like that. But what I really want to do is I want to say this new price. That's not the column name that I want to see. I'm going to double click on this and change this to be price in euros. I'm even going to try and spell euros right for you. There we go. Beautiful. So we've made a small modification to it. So at this point, I've got a nice little pricing table, and I'm going to move it into my staging queries. And I'm now going to go and I'm going to load both of these tables just to my staging area so that I actually have them ready to work with. And I'm going to come back and I'm going to use pricing a little bit later. But what I want to do now is I want to go grab all these text files. So we're going to go and we're going to right-click on Files List and say Reference. And I've now made my second query that points back to the files list. And at this point, I want to go and play around with these guys. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to scroll across a little bit to the right, and I'm going to drill down into the attendance folder that has the list of all of the courses that we've done over the last few years and the attendances. You'll notice that this list drops down, so we've got our 2010 through 2014 files. And at this point, I'm going to do something magic. I don't want to go through in the classic way of dealing with things and open up one file and fix it, and then go and open another file and fix it, and then copy from one to the other. Copying and pasting is so 1995, it's not even funny. Okay? So here's what we're going to do instead. We're going to go and we're going to click this Combine Files button. And at this point, it's going to come back and it's going to say, hey, I'm going to give you a preview of the data in here, and I'm going to let you choose from a list of files. I'm going to let you choose from a list of the first file and only the first file, which kind of makes it funny that there's even an option. But you'll notice there's a preview of the data, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to say OK. And at this point, it's going to go and it's going to, oh no, I just made a really big mistake too. That is fantastic. Bear with me one second because I'm actually going to go back and do something here and fix it. I want to get rid of this and this. I'm going to redo this because I made a horrible, horrible mistake that I was telling people in the masterclass to never ever do. So let me just go and say all of these guys here need to go away. Delete. Awesome. There we go. Let's go back and redo this. There's nothing like a good little bug to actually slow me down for this. All right, so the first thing we do before we go and combine files is we always rename the table. This is important. So we say courses, and now that we have that, now we're going to go combine our files. If we didn't, I get a whole bunch of really horribly named queries on the left-hand side that make no sense. So now we'll go and we'll say OK, and we'll get these new queries to pop out on the side. And here they come, evaluating, perfect. So the challenge that I had, and I just can't live with myself with this, is that if I hadn't done that, this transform file would say transform file from files list 2, but it needs to say from courses. So here's the thing. What's happened? I actually have already combined every single file in that folder. If we look at this particular query right now, it's got over 1,000 rows in it, even though each of those files might only have 300 rows in it. But what I want to do is I actually want to clean this up. I need to unwind this data. This query here is actually the first file that was in that list that I can work on. This one has 686 rows and only 686 rows. Unfortunately, they're in kind of a gross state for what we're actually working with right now. So I need to unwind this and get this into a nice tabular format. So there's a pattern in order to actually go and unwind this data. And I'm going to walk you through what it is. And if you come to a masterclass, you'll actually get all the steps to do this nice and easy. It works like this. We're going to add an index column from 0. We then need to go through and we need to work out a specific number, a magic number to make this work. And the magic number is, we're looking down this set of data and I need the value from the index column that represents the first row of the second transaction. And in this case here, it's this one here. Because we've got topic, attendees, Excel is the topic, so the magic number is 7. And I need that for going to my index. I'm going to add a new column, standard, divide integer, and we're going to go and say, let's give it the magic number of 7. And when we do that, we'll get a beautiful column that says 0, 0, 0, 0, 0 all the way down until it hits Excel. And then it says 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, and then it finds the next topic, which is Word, and goes with 2, 2, 2. This is a transaction ID number. Okay? Every one of these lines is specific to a specific transaction ID, and that's what this is actually referencing. I'm now going to go back and change this column, because right now this is a file line ID number, but if I transform it and go and use a modulo, and I feed it the same magic number, 7, it now converts this column into a transaction line ID number. So I've got my transaction ID and my transaction line ID. And why this is super important is because now I can go and maximize my window so I can find my column. There we are. I'm going to pivot the values in this index column. and it says, what are the values you would like in the bottom right-hand corner? So if you think about the pivot table for a second, what it's doing is it's taking the values 1 through 6 in this column, and it's going to make those my row headers, or column headers rather. And it says, what do you want to see in the bottom right-hand corner of the pivot table? Well, I really want all of the text that's in that first column. But what happens when you drop a text field into the bottom right-hand corner of a pivot table? What does it do? It counts it. Well, that's not going to be, I don't really care about a count of this stuff. I want to see the text. How many people here have always wanted to be able to drag text into the bottom right-hand corner of a pivot table and actually have it show up as text? Would that be amazing? So check this out. If I go and say advanced options and change this to don't aggregate, at this point I can say okay and boom, done. Yeah, darn rights, wow. Okay, so we're now going to go and say integer division. We don't need this column anymore, so we'll just delete it. And then I can take this first row here, and I can say, you know, that first row looks an awful lot like headers. Let's pop that baby up to the top so that we actually have some headers. Fantastic. And it's already done some changes of data types, and on my system that's actually probably okay, but if I were trying to work with this in a different location, I also have the ability, if I go back and delete this for a second, I have the ability to be a little bit smarter with the data types. I can look at topic and location and instructor and the currency here, and I can right-click and I can change these so that these are showing up as text. And that's going to be important for later. My attendees, I'm never going to have a partial attendee, so I can change these to whole numbers. My satisfaction looks like it's a decimal number. You'll notice that these decimal numbers are using decimals with a dot. You guys, of course, use commas. So if I needed to actually change that, I have a way to do it. I'm not going to do that here because I don't need to. But the one that does concern me is date, because this date is in a format of month, day, year. And if you want the comprehensive list of all countries in the world that use this format, it is the USA. That's it, right? There's only one. So the challenge is that I live in Canada, and I have no idea what this date format is going to represent on my side. You guys definitely use a different date format. So what we're going to do is we're going to say change type using locale. And what I can do with this is I can actually come back and say, you know what, let's change this to a date, but I want to force this to be interpreted as a date in a United States format. Touch this data before it lands in Excel, figure out what the proper date serial number is, and put that in the cell for me. That's what this is doing. So this is coming from the US, and it now converts it into, I use an ISO standard, year, month, day, for my Windows settings, so this actually works out beautifully now. One more change I want to do this file. When I was playing around with this, Gasper told me, he says, this looks great and everything else can, but Euro, I can't use that when I'm trying to report it at the bank. I need a different piece. So I'm going to replace the values here, and we're going to change Euro to EUR so that you can hopefully run it through the bank and get something back from it. And we'll say, okay. So the key thing I want you to recognize here, I'm working inside a transform sample file. This is a single file, and I've done all of this work. Every bit of this is going to happen before I take each file and then stack them into one big long table. And if I now go back to courses, I get a very inspiring error. And that's because I used to only have one column, but I don't have one column anymore because I did a bunch of work. So let me just delete that step, and boom, there we go. What you probably didn't notice is if I look at my transform sample beforehand, this data set works out to 97 rows. If I go back to my courses, it's taken the pattern that I built on one file and it has applied it to every single file in that files list for the folder and stacked them into one big, long, nice table here. So this is pretty awesome. We've just gone and converted 7 files just like that. 528 rows of data. I need to do a little bit more work on this. I'm going to change my topic here to be text. I have to reset my data types. My attendees, they're going to be whole numbers again. My location and instructors, these guys are still going to be transform or change type rather to text. Let me see, we'll reset my satisfaction back to decimal numbers, and we'll set our currency to text, and we'll set our date to be, in this case, it's already been converted properly, so I can now format it as a date. I'm just going to give myself a little more room here, because the next thing that is not in this file that I really want is the price of the course. But I had that in the pricing table. Now, unfortunately, Power Query has no way to do a VLOOKUP approximate match, but there's another tricky little pattern that you can actually apply to this. And it's a little bit strange because normally we would think that we would try and merge tables this way. The append function works where we stack them this way. But in order to make a VLOOKUP, which has this behavior for an approximate match, we actually stack it this way first. So what we're going to do here is we're going to come back and we're going to say, let's append a query to this. I'm going to go and append the pricing query to it, and we're going to say OK. And what will happen is you'll notice that I now get a new column that says the price in euros. And it says null, null, null all the way down. Well, that's OK. I can fix this. I'm going to sort my topic in ascending order. I'm going to sort my dates in ascending order. And just to be safe, I'm going to sort my currency in ascending order because it has a null value. And just like that, I've actually popped from the pricing table the price in euros up to the very top. And you can see underneath it says null, 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 null. And if I scroll down far enough on this guy here, I think it's going to take me down about, I don't know, 500 rows or so. Let me see. Right around here, I can see that I have another price that's actually showing up in here as well. This is where the price actually changed. April 7th, we changed our price, so the next one comes in. Well, the nulls aren't going to help me. I need real prices. So, right-click, fill down. It fills that value all the way down until it encounters another actual value, and then it repeats that pattern all the way down. And with this in place, I can now go back and say, let's get rid of the null and say OK. And just like that, I now have all of my prices merged into the table with an approximate match VLOOKUP. So this is a pretty cool little pattern. And I got to, even though I'm not wearing a hat, got to give a hat tip to Oz on this one because I actually had a much harder way of dealing with this. And Oz went, yeah, I've got this one. Check this out. I'm like, dude, that's magic. So I've totally stolen his pattern. Any rate, so thanks, buddy. All right, next up. We're going to take a look, the next thing that we want, we have our price in euros, but that's the price per attendee. So I really want to know about my gross revenues. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to grab my attendees, I'm going to go and grab my price in euros over here, and I'm now going to say add column, and we're going to go standard, multiply, and that's going to give me a beautiful column that it helpfully calls multiplication, because why not, right? So we'll just change this one now to revenue in euros. And enter. And I've now cleaned up, I've taken 7 text files, 1 Excel file, imported them all, merged them together, and done a little bit of data manipulation in order to build the table, the main table, the fact table that Gasper is going to need in order to go and actually build some analytics. Okay. Now, the reality is, though, that if we're working with PowerPivot, we actually need a little bit more than this. We don't sit out one table and send it out because we might have another fact table. Maybe we've got budgets or we've got forecasts, which I actually do have. So I need to create some other things. I've got to create some dimensional tables. And in order to have a dimensional table for our PowerPivot model, what we actually need is we need things like our topic. We need a list of topic with unique topic IDs. So not a problem. I've got my beautiful courses table all set up, and I'm going to load that to the data model, so I'll move that down here. I'm going to actually spin this off of the courses table. I'm going to go right-click, and we're going to choose reference. And you'll see that it gives me this entire table. And I'll say, you know what, I don't want to do anything to the courses table. That's still here. This is courses. All the stuff is here. But I can come back here and I can say, you know what, let's go right-click, remove all the other columns, and right-click and remove the duplicates. And just like that, I've got a beautiful list of topics. And it's built off of the previous one. So if anybody ever adds a new topic in here and it refreshes and comes into the new file, this is going to pick it up because it's based on that table that's already been transformed from all these text files. So that's pretty cool. We can now go and say courses again. I think I want one for location. So I'm going to go courses, right-click. We'll go reference. We'll change the name of this table to locations. Right-click. Remove other columns. Right-click. And we'll remove the duplicates. There we are. And I think I'm even going to sort this one because I don't like the client site room 213. That seems odd. So we'll sort it into a different order. There we are. What else can we get from courses over here? Oh, instructors. There we go. That's another good one. We'll reference him. We'll make a nice little table of instructors. Right-click. Remove other columns. Right-click. Remove duplicates. Oh, that's not right because I'm going first. So we're going to go and we're going to change that sort of sending. Nope, descending. That's better. There we go. Yeah, there we go. That's perfect. All right, let's see my name first, right? All right, so we'll go back to courses here. You know what? We've got another text column over here as well for currency. So let's go and grab this one as well. So we'll go and we'll say reference. We'll go and make a nice little table here for currencies. I can't see when I put my mouse right on top of it. That makes it a lot harder to read. Currencies. I also can't spell today, apparently. And right-click, remove other columns. Right-click, and remove duplicates. So you can see how quickly you can go and you can actually spin things off. We'll sort this one into ascending order as well. which puts Canadian dollars at the top, which makes me happy as well. So there we go. You know, you got to get your data right so the first things come up first, right? I mean, if you're working in a cost center and your cost center comes up first when you're putting out your budgets, sort that to the bottom, right? Because cost centers just get cut in the budgeting process. You don't want that happening. But sorting, powerful thing. So we've done and we've gone and spun a whole bunch of queries off of this data set. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go and say, well, let's go home, close and load. I'm going to load these. And I'm going to load all of these guys to the data model in PowerPivot. I just want to bring this over here because I want to show you, as we do this, that we should be creating a bunch of new queries. And it's going to go and it's going to spin a little bit here, and unfortunately the ones that I want are going to be off screen. But if you see in the bottom here, it tells me it's receiving data. We've got about 17 rows done so far, and it's going to, oh wow, it went really fast. But at the end of the day, I've now created a whole bunch of tables here. So I've got a courses table with 528 rows. I've got my topics with 4, my locations and currencies and such as well. So this is good. Everything's there. But the key thing that I want you to recognize is that I've done this work once, and now what I want to show you is this. If I come back to my folder, in my attendance folder right now, it stops at 2014. But of course, time marches on, we do more courses, so we're going to take this and we're going to say, let's move this in here. We'll take a look at attendance. Now all these files are in this folder. So I've just added 3 new files with a whole bunch more data. And the key thing I want you to recognize now is when I go and click one button, data, refresh all, and you're going to see these guys are going to start to spin again. We got 528 rows in courses right now. We'll just wait until it cooks and does its thing. Here it goes. How many rows do we end up with in the courses table now? 831, oh, more coming. 831 rows. So 3 more files, boom, just done, finished. I can tell you're impressed. All right, fantastic. Maybe we're going to have to do something with it, Gasper. I don't know. It seems, Anyway, the next step that we got to do before Gasper can get in and start writing some pretty awesome DAX. Actually, I also just want to sort of throw this one out too. Everything that I've been doing in Power Query here is doing a bunch of coding. It writes in a language called M. And do you guys see how much M I wrote today? 0, because it's all driven through the buttons in the user interface. So there was a comment made earlier about how you're going to need to learn M if you need to work with Power Query. No, you don't. If you want to, it's awesome, but you don't actually have to learn it. It's a lot of stuff that you can do without ever touching this. So what I've got now, for those of you who've never seen PowerPivot before, this is the back end of PowerPivot for creating relationships. Looks a little bit like Access. What I can do now is I can say my instructors here, I can link over to this side. It is a best practice when you do this to always hide the many side of the relationship so that it doesn't mess your report designer up. We'll go back to location. We're going to hide these guys too. We're going to link our currencies in here. And we'll right click and we'll say hide from client tools here as well. And we'll grab our topic. We'll hide that off. And at this point, I think the last one that I need is the date. That one's going to go this way. And that looks like it's good. So we'll right click and we'll hide this. And at this point in time, I've built a beautiful model inside PowerPivot. You can actually see the data in here as well. So for those of you who've worked with a pivot table and you've always wondered what is in the pivot cache when you refresh your data because you can't see it, in PowerPivot, you have a pivot cache you can actually look at row by row, which is pretty awesome. And at this point, the next part is to start creating pivot tables and to start creating metrics. And for that, I'm going to hand it over to my buddy Gasper. And he's going to come up and build us some cool analytics along the way here. Dude, the computer's over here.
Yeah, I know. I just want to make a point here. Oh, yeah. There you go. Okay, so first off, I'm working on Ken's computer, so if anything goes wrong, it's his fault, exactly. We got that down. Okay, so the point of this is, at this point, we've got the data inside our data model, but it's just tables. And I'm left with 24 minutes to create all the measures, all the calculations, and create an analysis from this. Because I'm betting you all want to know which instructor is better, right? Sure. No, I'm not. No, we're not going to do that, but we're going to do quite a bit of fancy stuff within our model. So the first thing we need to do, at this point we have a model and we don't only have connections, which is good. Connections are always good. But there's some things that haven't been done right. And the first thing that is the most important one, as far as I'm concerned, is we have our fact tables and we have our dimensions. And there's one dimension that is the most important of them all. And the ones that were at the masterclass yesterday know this. And that is calendar, exactly. So the calendar table, I have it right here. But does the PowerPivot know that this is the calendar table? Okay, I see no one was listening yesterday. Good. So it doesn't, because I need to do this. So I need to go to my calendar table, and I need to tell Excel that this should be marked as a date table. And I have my dates right here. And if Ken did them correctly, no error popped up, so probably he did it. And there's a checkpoint here, so that's cool. And now, yeah, sure, always. Vice versa. Okay, and now we can start creating some pretty magical stuff within Excel. And we're just going to fire up to Excel. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at a pivot table chronologically. So we're going to create a pivot table that will connect to our data model. And we're going to say, what I need is the month names, and this will be shocker number 1, I guess. Not for those that were at the masterclass, but for all the others. So I need my month names, and what do we see? Yeah, they're sorted all wrong. They're sorted by what? Yeah, the alphabet. But oh, sure. So this is what we're seeing. And this is not a good keyboard. So this is what we're seeing. Yeah. And the first thing that we need to do, and this is, when you see this for the first time, it seems as if it's a bug. And then you think about, this is the worst thing that has ever happened, because if you do this in Excel, it will sort them correctly. But PowerPivot doesn't work that way. In PowerPivot, you have something that you might find funny, but it's something like this. You're going to say, well, I have this column right here. And what I want you to do is I want you to sort it by another column. And I want you to sort this one by column month. So number 1 will be January. Press OK. The model spins off. And there you go. Now, it seems as if I was jumping through hoops to get to something that Excel already does. But think about it differently. Think about it, this means I can sort anything exactly the way I want it to. So if I got companies and I have revenue and I always want to see those companies in the same order, all I have to do is this and they'll appear in the same order every time. So that is one of the most brilliant things you have ever seen, and yet I'm not feeling the love. Okay, doesn't matter. So we got this, and this is where things get kind of interesting. This is where we start writing our DAX formulas. So this is where we start creating our measures. And the first one, of course, will be revenue. There are 2 ways to create measures. There's one that is absolutely wrong, and that would be to create an implicit measure, which would be pretending you're just in Excel. I would take revenue in euros and just haul it down there. And what I would get is an implicit measure, and that you should never do that. But you should always do something like this. PowerPivot, measures, new measure. And then you say, put this one in courses. And let's call this one, let's do it. Oh. That obviously was not the right key. Well, obviously not. Control. Why? Oh, I'm going to need your finger, man. Could you just throw it? No, I did Control Y. But I did F and Y. Never knew that turns it off, right? There you go. Now you know. Yeah, I probably will. So let's do it this. Okay, so we'll call this one. Oh, no, stop it. Total revenue. And it will be as simple as it gets. So it will be sum of courses and revenue in euros. There you go. There you go. Check it. Of course, it's correct. And then there's dollars again. So we have to change those to euros. Yeah, sure, why not? So this is our total revenue. This is our total revenue for which year? Yeah, for all years. Why? Because I haven't selected any years. So let's see if this measure actually knows that we have different years, or if we can filter by years. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to find our years right over here and just add it as a slicer. So something like this. And this works perfectly. So now I have total revenue for 2013. And if I look at this number, let's say May, did I do well in May? Yeah, we don't know exactly. I mean, judging by April and June, I did well, but what would be the key comparison here? Well, it would be May of previous year. Okay, so now I need to calculate this for previous year. What do you think I'm going to do? Create a new measure, exactly. So I'll create a new measure. This one will be called total revenue, PY, so previous year. And now we get to the ultimate DAX function, and that's calculate. That is your all functions in one, probably. We've used this in the masterclass about 99% of the time when we're writing our measures. And it will be as simple as this. So I want you to calculate what I already taught you to calculate. So I want you to calculate courses, total revenue, but then I want you to do a date add. There you go. And this is where I really need my calendar, because this is a time intelligence function, and it's going to do amazing things, because it's going to do this. Where am I? I'm going to go back a year. And that's why I need my calendar, and you'll see that this one asks me for dates, and that's exactly what it wants. It wants my calendar table and that column of dates. So what I'm going to do is say you should go to my calendar date, and then go back by what? By year. Well, that's not year. There you go. Okay. I have to be very careful by what I press, because we know what can happen. This one's okay. Let's say we're going to do this in euros. Nope. Let's say we can't find euros. Oh, there you are. Sure. And at this point, I don't know what's just happened, because this is the best thing you've seen all day. Oh, I get it. You can't see it because it's so small. There you go. So I just did a calculation for previous year like this. In Excel, this would be, you know, ifs and some ifs and search and VLOOKUPs and whatever. Simple as that. And now I'll do this. I'll say, yeah, okay, that's cool. Now I have my previous year. Now I'm going to switch it up a bit, and I'm going to go to the PowerPivot window, go to my courses table, and right at the bottom, I have my measures. So these are my measures that have just disappeared on me. There you go. Okay. And one of these is my total revenue PY. That's the one that I just written in Excel. So here it is, how I can view it in PowerPivot. And I'm going to do something now. I'm going to create 5 more measures that are going to give me total revenue for previous month, for 2 months back, for 3 months back, for 4 months back. I could do them all in Excel. The only trouble would be for each one I would have to go new measure, rename it, and do all sorts of crazy stuff. But here I'm just going to copy this. Control C. Go here and say there's a new measure. I will call this one PM. Nothing to do with the British Prime Minister, Charles. -1. And month. There you go. So, by changing actually one thing in this formula, it's now not going to go back a year, it's just going to go back 1 month. Check this. And now this one looks brilliant. I'll just go here. Go previous month 1. That will go back 2. This is very logical, people. Like this. Create another one. This one will be PM2. And of course it will go back 3. And we just need 2 more. So this one will be PM3. Go back 4. And the last one, PM4, and this one will go back 5. There you go. So I just created 5 new measures, and the reason I did it here, I don't think you ever see people writing measures in here because it's tedious. But if you're doing measures that are all the same, this is the easiest way to do them. So that's why I did this here. And now I'm going to go back to Excel. And I'm going to copy this one. So I'll create a copy of this pivot table. Oh, before I do that, I should probably bring in another slicer. And this one by, let's do it by topic. Okay, so now I can see that Excel, the revenue was this. Why did I make a point of creating a slicer before I copied my pivot table? That was a question, people. Yeah, so the reason is, when I copy and paste this, I got another table that is influenced by both of these. And if I only copied it and then created the slicer on the first one, it would not affect the second one. So I'm just keeping, okay. And now, within this one, I don't need previous year. Oh, there you go. I don't need previous year. I don't need the month name. And what I do need are my brilliant measures. These ones. And let's just do them in a totally different order. Like this. Like this. This, and like this. Brilliant. And let's just turn it around like this. So these are my results for the last 6 months. And I could probably do this to make it more visual. Let's just put it here. So this is my, oh, and we've been doing very well. But the reason this one is not functioning quite correctly is if I'm looking for the last 6 months, it should probably know where I am within months. So I'm just going to add month name like this. There it goes. So this is my revenue for the last 6 months. And now we should just create this. We'll create 2 pivot tables that will be the victim of the circumstance, but we're going to need them to create something really, really brilliant. So we have our total revenue, we have our total revenue PY. We should probably make another copy of this. Oh no, that one's cool. We have this. We'll add our total revenue PY here, like this. That's cool. And then we'll do the two tables I was talking to you about. So Control C, Control V, Control V. And things will go terribly wrong with this one, but still. Yeah, there you go. I'll just put this one away for now. So this one I'm just going to use for the one thing. I'm going to use it to tell me which year it is. I should probably put it there. And this one will be this victim almost of the same thing, because this one is just going to tell me which month is selected, like this. But if I have this, I can now say, okay, let's do it like this, although it will be, so I can say this is the, so where is your double quotes? Oh, I think I see them. There you go. So this is the total revenue for, and now let's do this, let's do this. And this is total revenue for February. And then let's add those of, one more of those. And there you go. Oh, and something went terribly wrong. Probably. Of, yeah, this one didn't connect. There you go. Okay, and what I got here is a brilliant thing, because this one's now dynamically showing me what I've selected as far as the periods are concerned. And now I need a beautiful chart, and this chart needs a title, and that title of course should be exactly this. Okay, so this looks nice. Now I can actually start building something. So now I can say, oh, and just spoiler alert, I'm probably going to break every rule that Layla was talking about. And I'll probably break every rule that Boris was talking about. And what I'm also going to do is I'm going to do a lot of cell merging, which you should never do. But I'm still going to do it. So it'll be something like this. Let's say this needs to be Excel green, like this. Let's merge it, because why not? And I'll say this should be exactly this. Let's make this one like this, like this. Let's make it bigger. That is not bigger. Canadians are strange. No, because it's, oh, maybe. Doesn't matter. Oh, and now it's, the Excel color is gone. That should never have happened. Okay, so let's do this one like this. And what we need now is a way to affect these two. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy these two to our final destination. Oh, lovely. So like this. And let's just do some. That's cool. That's cool. So like this and like this. And then let's carry these two far, far away out of sight. Ah, this sounds good. So like this. And now, what I'm going to say is, I need one of these beautiful shapes in Excel. This got very, so something like this. And this one will allow me to change or select period. Sounds better. Select period. it should be something like this. Okay, I'm not going to go too much into the design of it, although of course you should make it much prettier. And this one should take me to, let's say, what was it, AT1, some about. Yeah, brilliant. So just put this one here, this one here. So now I have a selector. I can say I want 2013, I want May. And there it is. So that works. And now just let me take this guy, put it right down here. And let's say that this one should take me back to reality. Now I can't type on this. There you go. Oh. There you go. And this should be a link to right here. Okay, so now I got select periods. I select something, go back to reality. I got this. And now let's take the data that we need. We definitely need this guy. We definitely need, well, let's just go step by step. So this one we're going to need. But I'm not a fan of these. So let's just hide this everything. Yeah, this looks sort of cool. Like this. So Control X, Control V. Okay. So now I select the periods. It's May 2015. And it is. Brilliant. And now we're going to do something like this. We're going to say, so this one should be wider. Total revenue. Total revenue PY. And total revenue last 6 months. Let's make that one even wider. Let's bring those to the right. Those should probably be a lovelier gray. Well, at least some of them should. This one should definitely be black. Should be bold. Okay. And now the total revenue is what? Well, it's this. So I'll bring, or actually, let's do it differently, because I haven't set up my my formulas yet. So it will be this one. No, it will be this one. And this one, previous year. There it is. And then this one has to be this one. So I press my Alt key so I can alternate between sheets, and I carry it all the way over here. There you go. This one should be bold, just to fit with that one. That is by Layla standards, I think. Exactly right, right? There you go. Let's make this a currency, and of course it's not euros. Let's not bother with that, although we should. Like this. Okay. And this, I can just say, okay, so this is for May 2015. What about May 2014? There you go. Okay. You're sort of forgiven because it's late, but there's no excuse, really. Okay, and then let's just do this. Let's just, well, we could do many things, but let's just do this. Let's say, okay, we know that total revenue and total revenue previous year is the main sort of comparison that we're doing. So let's just create another thing that you can do in PowerPivot. Let's create a KPI from that. So let's say I'll create a KPI. So I'll say I want my total revenue and I want to compare it to total revenue previous year. So if it's bigger than that, of course, it's green. And let's say, well, this, no boss would ever accept this, but let's say like this. Okay. And then let's just bring this bad boy in here. He is right here. So those of you that were on the masterclass know exactly what happened. Okay, so this is a simple KPI that is comparing the total revenue for this month to total revenue for previous year on the exact same month. And by the numbers that I gave it. So if it's bigger, then it's green. If it's within 75% to 100, it's yellow. And if it's below that, well, it should be red. But now I'm going to do something amazing. This is a pivot table, right? Because I created it as such. And pivot tables are very, well, Leila said they're brilliant and you can, manage them, but they're still pivot tables. So you can't insert columns, you can't do quite amazing stuff with it. But this is a pivot table that is special in a way that was created off a data model from the PowerPivot. And because it was done in such a way, I can actually take this pivot table and I can convert it to formulas. And it still works, but these are now just cells. These are now cells that I can carry around. Something went terribly wrong. Oh, get pivot data. That's the first thing I turn off, Ken. You haven't turned that off. I don't believe it. Okay, yeah, sure. No excuse will ever do. So is this one? Yeah, I could. Now you're the smart one. There you go. So this I think is pretty close to eternal happiness, I think. Now, of course, this should be, at least done like this, and a lot of things should be done here, but isn't this the most beautiful thing you've ever seen? And the key to this is DAX. And the key to this is PowerPivot. And what you've just seen is the basis of modern Excel. Modern Excel, that's the big keyword you keep hearing. And that is Power Query to get your data, to clean up your data, to get it into the shape where you can consume it, and then PowerPivot to analyze it. And I think the power of PowerPivot was just presented to you, right? Okay. And at this point, Ken and I will take questions.
Applause.
Sorry.
Questions to Gasper and Ken, if you have.
Should be.
Before we take questions, just one thing.
Ken, just...
Yeah, it's not on. They have the...
Hello. Is that working now? Hey. All right. Before we take questions, just one thing to watch out for. One of the things that we're going to do is we're going to distribute some samples, and the patterns that I ran through to clean up the data, they actually work like this. This is a product that we've been working on for a while, and I've just actually released 30 different patterns for data cleanup. And the pink color looks way better over there than it does over there, but this is basically the steps that I went through in order to go and take that single column of data. And if you came to a masterclass, you've already seen this, although this is the much more fun version with my cute monkey. We also have the approximate match. This is a pattern that actually shows how to do that, so it's step by step. And I can see you guys taking pictures already, but you know what? We're actually going to distribute to you guys a printable copy of this. So watch for the downloads after this whole thing is done. It's going to be way easier to read a full-size piece of paper than your phone. Okay, so, and on that note, let's take questions.
Sure.
Okay, first question.
First, thank you very much for the presentation. It was really interesting. My question is for Ken. Often when I work with Power Query, I get, not often, but sometimes, a very painful error called formula firewall.
Yeah, I hate that one.
Yeah. +1.
Congratulations. Just, the club is an awesome place to be. We all hate that one.
It's a great club, but it's a bad common denominator.
Yeah, but you're looking for a solution, aren't you?
Yes, I am.
Yeah. So,
And there is one.
and so the solution is, if you want to see it go away, there is a data privacy setting that you can turn off. You can say avoid data privacy, and at that point it'll turn off the formula firewall. The question is that the right thing to do? The whole reason that message is there is it's to prevent you from accidentally leaking data when you're combining two different data sources. The problem is that it is extremely impactful, and there is no way to say, yes, I trust this data source can be combined with this data source. So basically, you can try and build your queries in such a way as you don't trigger it. That can be very difficult to absolutely impossible. I was dealing with somebody the other day who was actually trying to combine, they had a table of email addresses that was maintained in Excel, and they wanted to pull information based on the email address from Microsoft Exchange. Those are two different data sources. It's going to trip the formula firewall every time. The only way to deal with it is to shut the formula firewall off by turning off privacy settings. It is the bane of my existence. I hate it, but unfortunately, I've talked to a lot of the Microsoft engineers, and they said they've spent a lot of time trying to find ways to deal with it, and they don't have a better solution at this point in time. So the one bonus, though, if you do turn off the formula firewall, the speed of combining data typically increases by about 30%. So, for what it's worth. Having said that, you should not be combining social security numbers or ID numbers with websites and things like that. That's a dangerous thing, and that's why they want it on by default. So.
Another question?
Did that run long?
So thank you from me as well. My question is, when you work with your pivot table, is there a way to create a slicer for your measures and slice between them?
Sure thing.
Yeah.
So what you would need to do is to create a, oh, it's just too much work. So what you need to do is you would create a separate table, which you would say, let's say, total revenue year to date and total revenue, just total revenue. You would assign it an ID, and then you would push that table to your data model. And once you would do that, that would be a disconnected table. So you wouldn't connect it to any of the other tables, but it would live within your data model. And then you're just one measure away from actually creating a slicer year to date and that one, so total revenue year to date, and that would change your measure. And the key function in DAX to do that is switch. Because the switch function would look at your index, and it would say, if that is 1, then I want you to calculate total revenue. And if that one is 2, I want you to calculate total revenue year to date. So you have one measure, but with that slicer, it's actually showing multiple calculations.
The last question? Okay.
Thank you. I have a question for Ken. I'm working in a company where we have one team of developers, and we do Excel automations, and other teams are using our products. So the usual case is that I'm building a model for other users to use, and they are not Power Query users. So I usually operate query with VBA. And this works fine if you refresh it, if everything goes as expected. But if the query throws an error, is there a way to pass the error to a VBA or trigger an event or a message box?
Not directly. So you can actually build a conditional statement into your queries so that when they throw an error, it returns an alternate result. The challenge with a query error is that generally when it returns a query error, it actually breaks everything downstream. It doesn't want to refresh at all. You can actually throw an alternate result. So basically what you do is you actually have, this is where you actually do have to start writing M code itself, and it's not pretty. So just keep that in mind, because you need to actually code the output of your table, but basically with blank rows. And at that point, what you do is you run a statement that's called try, and you say try the last step of what I believe the query is. If it fails, feed it a blank table. Otherwise, give me the proper result from the previous step. And at that point, it would load a blank table into your data model, so then you can write something to actually say, is this blank? Can you feed the output of Power Query directly into VBA? No, but you can use VBA to react to what's actually happening in the worksheet after update. So there are ways, it's a little bit hacky, you gotta put in some groundwork behind it.
Okay, thanks.
For reference, Chris Webb actually has a fantastic blog post on handling the errors in M with that, so I would check that out.
So thanks.
Oh, I'm going to do it.
Gasper, do you have
Yep.
something to add? Or
Well, I'm just going to
absolutely
do
last
what
question.
he said because
He's trying to slice by measures
I
as
think
fast as
he
can.
feels cheated now, so I'm just going to do it. There it is. So this is the measure that does exactly what you want it to. And let's just put it in there. There you go. So, woo. I can now, this measure can either be a total revenue, so now it's showing exactly this, or it can be a total revenue PY. And I'm affecting it by this slicer. There you go.
Thanks, Ken. Thanks, Gasper.
Sure thing.
Klaus.